What's going on, everybody? This is TEMPO-MAXX. This be part three of the little mini questionnaire series thing that I was doing from a friend up there in Sydney. The next question was, which was a good one, how did I get the name Tempo? Pretty good question. Okay, so this is how it all went down. Okay, so I was at my friend's house in 2000, year 2000. Back then, sounds weird to even say the year 2000, even though we're like 13 years ahead of it. But back in 2000, I was at my buddy's house. My name was Damon Parker. All right, and normally I would go over there before we would do, before I would go out or something like that, and we'd go hang out. And I was fresh out of high school, not much to do with myself, but I would go over his house to go hang. So I was over his house, and he just got into producing music, and he had this music program called Fruity Loops. Yeah, a lot of you producers or DJs out there are very familiar with this program. It was a free program that came out on the computer you can go download for people who had the internet, and which wasn't many back then. And yeah, you can program drum beats and all types of stuff to produce whole tracks and everything. So he was really into it, and I went over his house. And at that time, I was trying to figure out what should I call myself and what will make a big impact, something I can live up to, and something that will be important to me for the rest of my life, so I don't have to switch names or anything like that. So I happened to be looking at the screen of the monitor, and up in the corner, or right above, where all the little digits and stuff were, was tempo. He's changing the speed of it. And I was like, you know what? That doesn't sound bad. And he's like, what? Tempo. You think that sounds corny, man? And of course, Damon, being the type of person he is, he's like, I don't know. He didn't really care much about dancing, but I mean, he liked it, but not enough to be like, I don't know what y'all be doing over there, because it just wasn't his world. So I was like, I'm gonna play with that thing. Tempo's dope, man. So for about a couple weeks or so, I believe, I kept going over in my head, tempo, tempo. That sounds good. And then I end up asking my friend Halim Rasul, from Hardcore Detroit, and we were doing a mini showcase thing at my old high school. Uh, about some months after that, and I said, "Hey man, what do you think about the name Tempo?" And he's like, "Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. That's what you want to go by?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think it'll stick. What do you think?" He's like, "No, that's dope. Let's do it." And I'm like, "Fine, Tempo it is." And ever since then, it was just that Tempo. I didn't want to be called popping this and popping that because everybody else was doing it, and it just didn't sit right for me personally. Not saying that those are bad names or anything, but it's like it's just too much of a generalization, and I didn't want to be caught up in that. I wanted to sound cool, what I'm saying? Like I am my own separate entity. I'm not like anybody else. I wanted to stand out, and that's one of the main reasons why I chose the name Tempo. Um, and then being able to live up to that name, being messing around with speed changes and things like that, and doing all types of crazy things and accomplishing a lot. The importance of your namesake, you have to choose a name that's strong, that'll last you through the test of time. Not something corny, but something that matters. You don't need to put a boogaloo this or a popping this. If you want to, that's fine. Of course, if it's given to you out of honor and you respect that, go for it. But for me personally, I didn't need that. Um, the importance of having a good name and living up to it, is just as important as you practicing, and getting all the moves down and learning the history and understanding how this dance works. Uh, the big thing is when you come across somebody who has um, the same name, the same street name. Okay, the best thing you do when you're trying to find a good name for yourself, do a little research. It's even easier now. It was more common back then, 10 years ago or so, where you would run into somebody that would have the same name, and of course everybody knows the outcome of that. Got to battle. It can't be two, unless they come to a mutual agreement, which is very rare. So, there's only one case where I met somebody else named Tempo and we had to battle. The odds of that, he was an older dancer, and this was back in 2004. And I had to get at him, had to stop that. So, I mean, you always want to find a name that's not so common, you know, uh, and that's very important. Even back then, we just try to figure out, well, whose name is this or whose name is that, and whose name is this and whose name is that. That's how we did it, and that's a story about how I got my name. There's not really much razzle dazzle to it, so yeah. Hope that helps. On to the next vid. Peace.